Nice to meet you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Maria Peterson, candidate for Illinois House District 52 on the Democratic ticket. Nice to see so many familiar faces and some new faces. I am running for state rep here in District 52. Pam, actually, can you show the map of our very gerrymandered district? Put it up high. So that is the map of District 52. Some people says it looks like a dinosaur. Whatever you want it to be, it is what it is. It's 4 counties, Lake Cook, McHenry, and Kane, and we have knocked on doors in every county, and multiple times. I think we've knocked on, over the course of years, many thousands of doors. So I am I'm a Moms Demand Action volunteer, supporter, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my positions in a little bit, but I really want you to hear a story from Ms. Summerlove Romero. She is a gun violence victim. I think you will find that her story is very moving and why it is that we have the laws that we have here in Illinois. So with that, Summerlove, it's all yours.
Okay, I didn't bring any Kleenexes. I forgot that part, so hopefully we'll get through this without just the waterworks. But as Maria mentioned, my name is Summerlove Romero, and I feel like the word victim makes me cringe a little bit because I'm like, heck no, I'm a survivor. But in 2003, I was riding in a car with a friend on our way to a nightclub. I was in my 20s, so. And I just remember feeling a little uneasy about that night, but you know, you're young and you're just like, you know, let's just go have some fun. So we are in a lounge, and this was in Norridge, Illinois, and I remember walking in, and I went straight to the bar, and he was over talking to some people that I didn't know, and we left fairly quickly, and I didn't think anything of it. We get into the car. I'm obviously in the passenger seat, and I go to put my seatbelt on, and as I go to bend down, I'm digging in my purse to make sure I had my ID for the next spot, and I feel as he's trying to back out of the parking lot, the car kind of like stop and jerk, and he's like, I don't know what's up with these guys. So I just didn't think anything of it, and then we start to back out of the parking spot, and we come to, it was kind of like this strip mall kind of, to where there's, you know, at the end there's a right way and there's a left way. So we're kind of in the middle, and this car rolls up on the left side, driver's side, and just fires into the car. Wow. The next thing I remember, I was in ICU. The doctors had called my parents, which are praying parents. They are pastors. My mom has since passed, but to come to the hospital because I was not going to make it through the night. And I wake up, and the only thing I can see is all these people in my room, and I just remember the glass. And I couldn't figure out what had happened. I had no recollection of how I even got there. I didn't even remember being out that night. And I just hear all this beeping. So I guess my machine started going crazy because I started waking up. And my parents are standing over me. Doctors and nurses are rushing in like crazy. And the only thing I could mouth, I had a ventilator and tubes all in my mouth. The only thing I could sort of gesture was, what happened? And I remember my mom standing over me and saying, you got shot. And machines started going crazy again. And the next couple of days, I was delivered probably one of the worst blows. The doctors said that I would never walk again. At that time, I was 26 years old. My son, who's here, is my army son, was, a toddler. And I have an older son that I think they were 5 and 8 at the time, I can't remember, but I just kept thinking, who is going to take care of my kids? And I didn't understand why. I remember just cursing God and saying, I can't wait till everyone leaves my room, because the only thing that I want to do is take all this medication and die. Because if you take my will to run after my babies again, what else do I have? And I remember them coming in and saying, you are a quadriplegic. They gave me the diagnosis of a C7 spinal cord injury. But for some reason, I felt everything. I had full sensation. Nurses would come in and administer medicine, and they would sit you on the edge of the bed and step on my toes all the time. And I would push my toe back a little bit because it's the only thing that I can do. And they would freak out because apparently I'm a medical anomaly with a C7 spinal cord injury. And I just knew in my gut that I was going to walk out of the hospital. I just knew it. And it didn't happen that way. They told my parents that they would have to admit me to a nursing home because I would never be able to take care of myself again. I was being spoon-fed, changed every single day, lifted up to just take a shower. I had no movement whatsoever from my neck down. And I remember sitting there in a hospital bed and them transferring me to a wheelchair. And I remember telling my mom, I feel like I want to move my feet. And she said, what? And I said, I feel like I want to move my feet. And she said, let me see you do it. So I moved my foot. And she starts praising God, and all the doctors come running in. They're like, whoa, and they're like, can you feel this, and can you feel that? I'm like, yes, I can feel all of that. So here I am, the optimistic person that I am, thinking, oh man, I'm gonna walk out of here, I'm gonna show everybody they were wrong, and that didn't happen. I left out of there in a wheelchair after almost close to 6 months of being in the hospital. Not being able to do anything for myself, and having my kids come to visit me and not understand why they can't stay with me and why I can't go home with them. But the day did come that I was able to leave that hospital, and although I left in a wheelchair, probably the last 10 feet of getting to the car, I said, let me see that walker. And I walked to the car because I had to prove that I was going to walk out of the hospital. Thank you. It has been such a journey to get my life back, and although my life looks different, I wouldn't change anything that happens to me, not one thing. And I know some people are, why? Because when this happens to you, you become so consumed with anger and just the questions of why me, why me? And that happened for so long, but then I came to the point where I was like, why not me? Why not me? Why not my life and my story be used to save someone else's? Children. Because I am somebody's child. And I never, ever want to get a phone call like my parents did that night. The first thing I could do for myself was drive. I remember leaving church with my parents, and I told my dad, I feel like I want to drive home. And he was like, go ahead, try it. I drove all the way home, and I've been driving since. I might drive like Miss Daisy, but I've been driving since. The people that shot me were here on political asylum from Albania. They ended up fleeing the country. They found one. He came to court and was found not guilty. He was the passenger, and I feel like a part of me at that moment just became so angry all over again. So angry. And I said, one of these days, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna fight like hell to have this not happen to people again. And the driver, the shooter, he ended up fleeing to Canada. And the doctors, when they gave me that prognosis, the diagnosis of me being a quadriplegic and never walking again, they also said she'll never have children again. So here I am sitting at my prenatal visit with my daughter Lola, that's there with the curly hair, 7 years later, and I get the call from the FBI saying that they found him. They found him in Canada, and I remember the feeling coming over me was I felt so much sadness for him. And in that moment, I realized that God had just healed my heart. He took all that anger away and replaced it with so much love. And it could have been because I was carrying something that was a blessing, and I never thought that I would be able to do that again. But I was so thankful, but also I felt so bad for him because I know that he had just had a baby and he was married. And I just thought, wow, it was so daunting to me that what he took away from me was now being taken away from him to be able to be there for his kid. And he's still in prison. He also got caught on drug charges, so I think that kind of tacked on to everything. But I know a lot of people would look at somebody, and as Maria said, we say a lot of times, victim, 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 and it doesn't have to define you. It shouldn't define you. I believe that we go through things for a reason, and I'm such a firm believer in that. And I know that I'm here, and I'm called, and I'm anointed to change lives, and I think that starts with the discussion. I don't think there's any crazy resolutions or solutions right off the bat because people are so angry and they just want to fight each other over everything. But I think that it starts with conversation and hearing stories like mine. But again, stories of survivors. But not everyone is a survivor. There's people out there that don't make it. There's people out there that, go through what I've gone through, and the injury didn't take them out, but the mindset does. Yeah. And I'm so blessed to be able to be surrounded by people, a circle, but not a cage. People that encourage me to keep going, people that have always encouraged me to fight and to use my voice. Even if I can't run or physically fight like I want to fight for people and for this cause, I can use my voice, and I feel like that's so much more powerful than anything. And I'm going to continue to do it. So I just want to thank you guys for coming out and listening. And Maria, thank you so much for doing this. And when I first heard that, I didn't know that there were advocates that were, doing this for gun violence. I was like, whoa, I need to be a part of that. I really so. Hopefully you guys will see me a lot more, because I plan to do a lot more with my voice, shaky, scared, crooked, crutches, whatever. I'll do what I can to fight for this cause. So thank you guys so much. I'm gonna pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Summerlove. That's quite a story, and these are lived experiences that human beings are having here in the United States, here in Illinois. I'm going to start with this orange cape I have, or capelet. Hunters wear orange when they're hunting so that they are not victims of gun violence, accidental gunshots. And Moms Demand Action wears orange and says wear orange. So that's why I'm wearing this tonight. I started with Moms Demand Action as a founding member here with Jim McGrath back in 2017-ish, 18. And we just started out as a small group, and then eventually it got bigger and bigger as more and more gun violence was happening. We had Columbine, we had Vegas, we had all kinds of scenarios happening. And so our group got big, and then COVID happened, and everybody hibernated, and so we're still trying to regroup the Barrington area Moms Demand Action. But together, statewide, we've grown, and we've done laws. I've lobbied our legislators on behalf of Fix the FOID card, which is to tighten background checks and to ensure that people who've had their FOID cards revoked because of violations, that their firearms be removed from their possession. We've gotten rid of ghost guns. Ghost guns are guns that could be manufactured with a 3D printer, and they don't have serial numbers. So if a crime is committed with that ghost gun, then there's no way to trace the gun. There's no way to trace the owner of that gun. So we've gotten rid of ghost guns. We've also strengthened our red flag laws and worked with the ACLU on that so that we weren't violating people's constitutional privacy rights. But in strengthening the red flag laws, it's to take away, again, firearms from people who could be dangerous not only to other people but to themselves. And most recently, we have taking that red flag law, we've taken it another step further with Karina's law, which I also worked lobbying for, which is a case where in domestic violence cases. So a woman named Karina Gonzalez and her daughter were both killed by Karina's husband. Prior to that killing, she had gotten an order of protection from a judge to protect her. He did not leave the home. There were firearms in the home. They had obviously they must have had a fight or something. And then in the heat of the moment, he killed his wife and his daughter, and the son survived. And from that, legislators worked very hard in Springfield to get this legislation passed. It hit a couple of roadblocks because the state police need better clarification on how and when to remove firearms from a home that had a protective order. And so that was ironed out, and basically the way it is that if a person who has a protective order, if the person does not turn in their firearms within 96 hours of that protective order, then the police must come in. They're required to come into the house or residence and take away the firearms, because this is the most vulnerable time that a woman is at, where she can save her life and leave the home. But when you have firearms and you have domestic violence, it's very difficult for women to leave their homes. This is one of the reasons I'm also a member of WINGS. I am on the Northwest Leadership Council, here in the northwest suburbs because of domestic violence. Women, on average, are dying from firearm injuries, from firearm causes. 70 women a month in the country. 70 women a month are getting killed by firearms. 55% of the 80% of men that commit suicides is by firearms. And guns are the reason children are dying. And this is why the, I can't remember the name of the most recent law that was signed, the Safe Storage Act. Safe Storage Act. So now we have the Safe Storage Act, which is if you have a handgun or a firearm in the house, it has to be locked up in a safe. No longer can you have a handgun and it's just locked with a little cable. Because we've seen, right, how many families have been destroyed because a child has found a gun in a backpack underneath the bed or just laying around and they don't know any better and they grab it and they accidentally shoot themselves or shoot their sibling and then the whole family is destroyed because whoever is the owner of that firearm goes to jail. The victim is dead, and so where do those children go to? Their family is destroyed. So the Safe Gun Storage Act is now to ensure that guns are in a safe, whether it's a bio-safe with your thumbprint or a combo lock. Our efforts here in Illinois are to save lives. It's not to take guns away. It's to save lives because people who do own guns and do it responsibly and follow the laws, they can have all the guns they want. But just keep them safely locked so that those people who don't need them, who are a danger to themselves or to others, shouldn't get any access to those guns. So that's why I am so passionate about this movement, because I don't want to see individuals like Summerlove having to have suffered so much. And while there's a positive out of Summerlove's life, and I'm grateful for that, we want to make sure that people are safe. I have one more thing to say about this, and then I'm going to give it to Jim McGrath. I ask that you also implore your local police departments to label domestic violence for what it is. So here in Barrington, we had a situation where a woman doctor was killed by gunshot by her estranged husband. And Barrington wouldn't classify it as a murder, homicide, domestic violence issue. And so domestic violence needs to be addressed because women are at the hands of, let me take that back, it's not just women, could be men too. But domestic violence is happening, and there's a higher rate of death when there is a gun in the house, and especially if it's not locked. So this is why the Safe Storage Act is here, to ensure that those guns are locked up, so that things like that, in heat of the moment, doesn't happen. When I studied law, when I was in criminal justice in undergrad, and when I was in criminal law studying in law school, heat of the passion, it happens like that. And so we want to make sure that there's that cooling off time where instead of grabbing the gun, people think, okay, let me come to my senses and let's not do that, so that then their lives are not destroyed. The lives of the victims, the lives of the shooter. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Jim McGrath, who's going to give you a little bit more detail of some of the laws, including the new one that's coming up, the Rifle Act.
Thanks, Maria. And I do want to commend Maria. She was one of the first to join our Barrington Area Moms Demand Action Group. She's been passionate ever since. That was 3 weeks after Parkland that we formed that Barrington Area Moms Demand Action Group. What I'm going to talk about has a lot to do, listening to what Summer talked about. I can't imagine what her hospital bills were. She had to bear all that, or the taxpayers. All of us, we share in that. So I'm going to talk about something called the Rifle Act. Okay? who should pay for the firearm industry? Is it the responsibility of the person that got shot? I don't think so. So here, the problem. Firearm costs Illinois, it's very hard to read, this is $18 to $20 billion a year. And the reason you don't know that is because it's $10,000 here, $1,000 there. It's not consolidated anywhere. You don't know about it. But this is what we deal with. Okay? So a typical year, and again, these are a little hard to read, but it says about 5,000 individuals are shot, almost 18,000 fatally from suicide. But again, who pays for this? So I've got to step up in front here, I'm sorry. The costs are so Summer had to deal with this herself, or the taxpayers, or the municipalities. Why does it mean when somebody's shot, what happens? The police run out there, the paramedics run out, there's an ambulance that takes somebody to the hospital. We're all paying for that. We all pay for that. We don't see it, it's in your tax bill. It affects our medical insurance because they have to pass that cost on to all of us with our medical insurance. So here's the problem. Firearms are the only consumer product where the manufacturer is not responsible for the harm that his product causes. And why is that? In 2005, there was a law passed in Washington. It's called the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. We refer to it as the PLACA Act. What that says is you can't sue a gun manufacturer. You can't sue a gun manufacturer. So what I'm talking about is a way to get around that. We have had Kwame Raoul look at this bill. He's come back 3 times to say it doesn't interfere with the Constitution. It's still a legal law. So what do? What we want to do is charge the firearm manufacturer a fee to sell his gun in Illinois. Makes sense to me. And I hope it makes sense to you. And what we'll do with that money is we put it in a fund that will help defray the costs of victims of firearms. So, in other words, we'll share the cost, we'll put the burden back on them. They are making a ton of money from selling guns in Illinois. Illinois sells almost 500,000 guns every year. Just in Illinois. 500,000 guns in Illinois. So the way this will work is it'll become the responsibility of the police to identify the firearm that was used in the shooting. And we'll keep track of that. And for example, at the end of the year, if Glock, I'll just pick a number, has 10% of the shootings, what we will do is we will charge them a license fee based on 10% of the cost of the medical, of the cost that the state had to deal with the year before. So their license fee will be 10% of that cost. And we will do that for every manufacturer. You'd be surprised at how many gun manufacturers are right here in Illinois. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to make the gun in Illinois, but we want them to pay a license fee if they want to sell their gun in Illinois. So what we'll do is, the other thing so it's called the Rifle Act, Responsibility in Firearms Legislation. Unfortunately, that acronym is the Rifle Act, which some people kind of get their back up. But anyway, that's what it's been called. So, and what we'll do, again, this is the experience rating that I was talking about. If Glock has 10% of the firearms that were used in crimes, they will pay 10% of what we are estimating the cost will be in this year. So what are we basing this on? Very similar to workman's compensation. Workman's comp was started in 1911 in Wisconsin. Wisconsin was the first state to pass workman's comp. Illinois followed that same year, as did some other states. Every business has to pay into that workman's comp. One of the things that drove workman's comp was when somebody was injured on the job before this was passed, and they tried to sue their employer. The employer said, "You took that job, you knew it was dangerous. So it's not our fault, you must have screwed up." So now we passed the workman's comp, and now that fund helps pay medical bill. So that's what we want to do. We're following that logic with the Rifle Act. Illinois is leading the nation in this bill. There are other bills, other states that New York State, Connecticut, Michigan, Massachusetts, all looking at trying to pass this bill, but we are leading it. Now, I said it was there to defer medical costs. The other thing that we wanted to do, and you may not be, the acronym is CVI, Community Violence Intervention. I was on a call a couple of weeks ago, where a chief of police in Chicago said the reason that shootings in Chicago are lower last year, you've seen the statistics, it's like 23% down, is because they partnered with local CVI groups in the communities. A CVI group is generally somebody who was in a street gang, went to prison, realized that they made a mistake, and they come back to the community, and they want to make sure the young kids don't follow those same steps. So they mentor, they set up activities for the kids to keep them off the street. So we want to fund CVI as well as the victims. Why is it important now? What is happening in Washington? They are defunding our Medicaid, Medicare. They have defunding the CVI groups in Chicago. I was at a meeting in the Austin district in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and they had a whole bunch of guys that run the CVI groups in Austin, and they're successful. They know what they're doing. They get this done, but they don't know what they're going to be able to do because the funds are drying up. So this is what we need to do. Things like this to backfill where the government in DC is pulling funds back. So here's Illinois for 2024. We don't have the 2025 stats yet, but Illinois, almost 500,000 guns sold just in Illinois alone. How many of you guys went out and bought a gun? You're probably not one of them. Yeah, it's fine. One of the things that the gun lobby is trying to position this bill, this Rifle Act at, is a gun control bill. It has nothing to do with gun control. Nothing whatsoever. If you want to sell your gun here, pay the fee, sell your gun. Not a problem. Not a problem. So Maria touched on this a little bit earlier. One of the things that we got passed last year, and the law became effective on January 1st. These are bulletins that the state police have put out. The first one is, what we did is, secure storage was required if there was somebody under the age of 14 in the house that could get access to that gun. We moved it to 18, and like Maria said, in a secure box. Lock it up. We weren't able to get that included in cars, but this is a start. And that's the way our gun violence bills work. We get started, and then we move it, and then we move it, and we make it better, and we make it better. Like Maria was talking about the red flag laws, I think we've had 3 iterations to that since it was first passed. The other thing along with this is if you lose your gun or it's stolen, they want to report it within 48 hours. Why is that? Because lost and stolen guns are the ones that end up in schools. Now, if you have a chance, I went and talked to our school board a couple weeks ago and asked them to put this information on their website. It hasn't happened yet. I'm not done. So, there was one thing that's happening tonight in Kankakee is there is a town hall for the Rifle Act to explain to people just like I'm doing now, so you know what the Rifle Act is about. The first one we did was in Champaign, and we did one in Chicago. Then a week and a half ago we did one in Oak Park. It's in Kankakee now. We're going to do one in Peoria. We're going to move it around the state. I will post this information on the Moms Demand Action website. If you're interested, we have a Facebook page. Sign up for that, and so you can keep appraised of what's going on. But so that's about all I had, Maria. Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Yeah, you know, trying to cover gun violence and gun sense laws, it's like Swiss cheese. And just so you know, every piece of legislation is going to go through its trials. We're going to, you know, not everyone is perfect, and so it's like Swiss cheese. You know, you put a piece of cheese down, there's a hole, you find another piece of cheese, and we keep trying to make it better, all in the efforts of saving lives. So with that said, I'm going to introduce Lake County State's Attorney Eric Rinehart. He is like the hero of Lake County, and actually within the state of Illinois. We are so proud of what Eric has done, and he's going to cover a lot of stuff, especially with gun violence prevention, gun intervention, and the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Is that on? Yeah. Well, thank you for that introduction. I want to start by thanking Summerlove Romero for sharing her story. You're the hero for talking to us about something so difficult. One of the things I've learned is I was the state's attorney, the prosecutor for the Highland Park mass shooting on July 4th, 2022. I have sat with so many survivors and victims of gun violence, and every story is different. And because every life is different, and everybody's past life, if they've lost their life, and everybody's future life is different from the moment that this happens. And so we have to we want to listen to every story. We need to listen to every story because the solutions are different because people are different. And what's so important is to think about how deeply the problem of gun violence has penetrated our society. But if we don't hear from Summerlove Romero, if we don't hear from the people who told their story in the Highland Park sentencing, then one, we're not honoring them. Two, we're not learning how to make ourselves safer. And so thank you for sharing your story. I also want to move to thanking each and every one of you before I thank a third person, and then I talk about 3 things. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. By being here, you are saying that gun violence can be prevented. As I said a moment ago, it has so deeply penetrated our society, it is heartbreaking to me to read the Onion headline every time there is a mass shooting. Society says that nothing can be done to prevent this in only society where it happens. Right at the satirical Onion headline. It makes me want to cry because we keep saying in this country that it can't be prevented, and yet we are the only country where it happens, which means the other countries are preventing it. And so you are all here because you believe in that. It doesn't mean we agree on every single topic. It doesn't mean we agree on every single solution. But one of my favorite quotes from Shakespeare. The fault lies not in our stars, but in ourselves. This is up to us. It is not in our DNA. It is not in our destiny. It is up to us how we deal with this problem. And thank you, Jim, for sharing an unbelievably important solution to it. It's only one solution. So next, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And I want to thank Maria for running for this seat. We must have somebody who understands this. And Maria, by having this event, but much more than that, by her work on Moms to Men Action, she told you about her work on these individual solutions. We have to have Maria in Springfield. We must have Maria in Springfield.
Amen.
So thank you, Maria, for running and for doing this. Because I want to move to the three topics. And it's all about how we cannot have on-the-job training for any of these legislative seats. We, the Democrats, somebody give me a number. How many Democrats do we have in the House? How many Democrats do we have in the House? 1.5. How many? 118. 118. How many Democrats? Well, wait, what's the number? What's the Democrats? Does anybody know? All right, it's a lot.
118 Dems in the House and
But
in the Senate.
that's a lot more than the majority.
We have 59, 40.
We passed the assault weapon ban. We passed the assault weapon ban in 2022. That's amazing. That's amazing. Maria supported that. My friend Bob Morgan, Nancy Rotering, Nancy fought for one in Highland Park. Bob and Julie Morrison, Senator Julie Morrison, who's great, they fought for it after the Highland Park shooting on July 4, 2022. I remember the moment when I was talking with people, I said, well, I have to now walk out, as when we indicted the shooter, I have to now walk out and say, well, we have to have an assault weapon ban, right? We didn't pass an assault weapon ban until 2022, despite the Democrats being in charge in Springfield. I'm a lifelong Democrat, I love being a Democrat. We did not pass an assault weapon ban in Springfield until 2022. So every seat matters. And everybody's position as you think about the seats matters. We should have passed an assault weapon ban much earlier. The assault weapon ban is absolutely critical, and I want to give you one argument as you go out into society to think about an assault weapon ban. We have to have a national assault weapon ban. It is making us so, I can tell you as the state's attorney of Lake County, it is making us so much safer in Illinois because we have an assault weapon ban. I want to give you two arguments. The first argument is the shooter in Highland Park bought his gun legally. The argument that he would have gotten it somewhere else is nonsense because the shooter in Highland Park didn't get it somewhere else. He got it legally. It should be hard to buy assault weapons. If it stops one person, it has done its job, since an assault weapon can kill people in seconds. So if he gets pulled over for a speeding ticket because he wants to drive to Indiana where it's illegal and he turns around, that's just one person who was stopped. Of course it should be harder to get assault weapons. So the argument that, well, he would have gotten it anyway, just isn't true. Other countries that don't have assault weapons have less assault weapon shootings than the United States. So it's not true to say they would have gotten it somewhere else. That we don't use that theory anywhere else in our lives to say, well, it would have happened some other way. We have all types of things that make us safer in different ways. The other argument I want to give you about the assault weapon ban, and it goes back to the point I made earlier about how everybody's story is different. I don't want to speak about the shooter. I guess the case is over. I could a little bit. Hypothetically, that shooter probably thought he was going to die that day. The shooter in Las Vegas also thought he was going to and did die that day. The Uvalde shooter died that day. The Sandy Hook shooter died that day. They all expect to die, and none of them had prior arrests or convictions. Why does that matter? Because the argument that if we just lock everybody up, then mass shootings won't happen is ridiculous. The mass shooters I just listed legally bought their guns and didn't have priors, meaning they hadn't been convicted. So when were we supposed to lock the shooter in the Highland Park case up? What moment was that? When were we supposed to lock him up? 2021? He hadn't committed a crime. So the idea that, well, if we just lock people up, there won't be gun violence is ridiculous. They also thought they were going to die that day. So they weren't capable of being deterred. Oh, well, since I might get locked up, I guess I better not engage in this mass shooting. They thought they would die. They can't be deterred, which means we have to limit the access of people getting weapons. That is one of our solutions. The argument that if we just lock people up, there is an aspect of that that matters, but that's not the solution to mass shootings. That's not the solution to most shootings. If we were analyzing a plane crash, and I will compare a plane crash to shootings, if we were analyzing a plane crash, we wouldn't keep talking about one solution. We would look at all of the reasons that planes crash, and all of these shootings have different reasons. The red flag laws are absolutely critical and need to always be tightened because they are so complicated. And thank you, Maria, for bringing up the red flag laws. If you don't know, the red flag laws are just ways that we tell the Illinois State Police, revoke people's FOID cards, take their weapons, or the one that we work the most on in the state attorney's office is the firearm restraining order, which is where a judge can tell an individual, you individual cannot have firearms anymore because of something dangerous you did. There's a search warrant from a judge, the police take the guns out for a 6 months to 2 years while the person maybe gets mental health treatment, maybe the problem goes away. These are all different types of solutions to an enormous problem. But the firearm restraining order, Karina's law, all of these have to continue to be tightened. And again, we have to have somebody who understands it, and Maria Peterson understands it. She's not going to need on-the-job training to understand these laws that she herself has been working on more than me. So these red flag laws are absolutely critical. Lake County now leads the state per capita. I will brag only for a second to say that before I became state's attorney, that was not true. My Republican opponent wasn't interested in this topic at all. He probably was listening to people who said, that's a violation of the Second Amendment. It's not a violation of the Second Amendment. It is making our communities safer while guns are being taken out. We now lead the state on a per capita basis on the issuance of firearm restraining orders. I gave myself a time. But it just shows you that individual decisions matter, and this research says every 10 to 20 firearm restraining orders save lives. I'm so proud, but in 2025 we filed over 100 firearm restraining orders in Lake County. I don't think that number is massive, by the way, but it was 42 in 2024, and that's the year that I know we led the state. Now we have 101. And so all of these are making a difference, and the red flag laws are so important. The last thing I want to talk about is what Jim mentioned, which is community violence interruption work. I'm really proud that we do that in Lake County. I've talked with Maria about that, I've consulted with Maria about that. That CVI work, that community violence interruption work, Jim described it perfectly. It's people who've been to prison, people who've been in trouble before, going out and telling kids there's a better way. Think before you act. If you're here, you're interested in gun violence, so I will plug a book. Please go read Unforgiving Places by Dr. Jens Ludwig from the University of Chicago. It's called Unforgiving Places. If you really want to do a deep dive into gun violence in the United States, please go read that book. It was a game changer for me. I only read it in the last few months. I've been working in gun violence issues for a long time, but it was still a game changer. It's called Unforgiving Places. It's amazing, and it talks about the importance of CVI work. But we need funding. Every year in Springfield, we are seeking funding because it's hard to get it at the county level. Our county board people are amazing. They have funded it for a while, but times are tough, okay? And they're worried about whether the president's vaccine programs are going to lead to kids getting sick in Lake County. So, let me be clear. The Democrats on the Lake County Board have been amazing about funding our CVI work here in Lake County. We do run the CVI program. It's called the Peacemakers in Waukegan, North Chicago, and Zion. They've been amazing, but we always need help in Springfield. And we just don't need help in Springfield. Danville needs a CVI program. Champaign needs a CVI program. Rockford needs a CVI program, trust me. Chicago has them all over the place, but they need more. But we need legislators like Maria who understand how this all works, because she's going to be, when she wins, she's going to be inundated with thousands of pieces of information, and we know she's going to make gun violence a priority. Remember, we didn't pass an assault weapon ban until 2022. Potentially because we didn't have the right Democrats down there. I will say it. We must not have had the right Democrats down there because we had a majority. So each and every one of these seats matters. I am so thrilled to be able to have that CVI, program, which is funded by state dollars. Rita Mayfield, Adrian Johnson, Julie Morrison, Mary Lee Allen, everybody, Laura Faber-Diaz, Bob Morgan, Dan Darich, everybody has helped get us funding for it, and it has saved lives. Because as Jim said, gun violence is down, thankfully, throughout the country, throughout Illinois, and throughout Chicago. It's probably in the 20% kind of decline. That's fantastic. The areas where these CVI programs are working, I'm talking about those neighborhoods, it's down 40 to 50%.
Wow.
And over the last 3 years, North Chicago, Waukegan, and Zion, we are at a 65% decline in fatal in fatalities and non-fatal shootings. We know correlation is not causation. There are many reasons for it. But when you look throughout the country, that CVI is in the 40s, and we're also in that range, I think it is because of our program. We can't keep that program going without people in Springfield who understand it. We cannot have fantastic, calibrated red flag laws without people in Springfield who understand it. And we can't do brave things like ban the assault weapons without people in Springfield who can do these things. So we need Maria Peterson. Thank you very much. And I'll turn it back to her.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you again, Summerlove. I'm honored to have both of you here at my side, and Jim, thank you as well. I just want to say with regard to Jen's Love, like if you haven't had the opportunity, I went to hear him speak at the City Club a few years ago, and you know, it just, again, it's the heat of the moment passion thing. So this intervention work, interception work is so critical because kids today, there's so many kids whose parents are working, both of them are working, they're latchkey kids, they're not getting the opportunity to understand how to be reasonable in discussions. And so the first thing they do is they start to fight, they have arguments, and if there's a gun in the house or a firearm, that's the first thing they're gonna go to instead of just saying, hey, let's sit down and talk about our differences. They go and they pull out the firearm, and then before you know it, we have gun violence. And so this is why it's critical to have funding. It's critical to teach people how to sit down and discuss things. You know, and it starts at a young age, and it just continues onward, because we see today, right, that there's so many differences of opinion, and we have an administration that instead of encouraging people to sit down and talk about their differences, that it's like, well, if you don't like what I say, I'm gonna do some retribution on you. So let's try to keep this momentum of talking with one another instead of fighting with each other, so that we can keep each other safe. So we have a few questions. The first one is, how does the affordability crisis impact gun violence? Want to take that?
So one of the things we always want to be thinking about is the root causes, right? The root causes of crime. I'll give you another saying to take out in the world. There is no better way to be hard on crime than to prevent it. The way that we can prevent crime is whether it's these interruption models, whether it is to get people jobs, whether it is to make sure that we're dealing with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, to love people, to treat them as people, and to say that when I think our country is boiling in trauma. Unfortunately, I think that's been true since the pandemic, all for different reasons, or maybe all one reason. But we have been boiling in trauma. And so whether it's the trauma of losing a job, whether it's the trauma of a loved one losing a job, this is happening more and more from the pandemic, from the president's fear tactics, from whatever is driving the trauma in this country, it is leading to gun violence. And so if we don't handle affordability and our economic issues, and frankly, as Maria said, the way that we are all fighting with each other, then we are going to continue to boil in that trauma. And we have a lot of guns. They might have a lot of trauma in other countries. And frankly, in Switzerland and Canada, they have a lot of guns, but they don't have a lot of trauma and a lot of guns. And that's one of the problems that the book talks about. But that's one of the problems in the United States is that we have both. And it's kind of important to point that out, particularly when we have the Second Amendment, because if you can't just say, well, there's too many guns, because there are some countries where there are more guns, but there are not some of the other things that we struggle with in this country.
Thank you, Eric.
I also want to just say, when I ran for the Senate in 22, I did some police ride-alongs with 5 different suburbs. And suicide in one particular village where it's a higher end village. Suicides amongst men was very high, and because they might have lost their job, they were afraid to tell their spouse, they were afraid how to deal with the debt that they accumulated, and so they committed suicide, and some of them were by gunshots. And so, with everything happening right now, with the affordability crises, we really need to keep an eye on our friends and our neighbors, because if they have a gun and it's not locked up, I'm afraid that some people are gonna hurt themselves or kill themselves. So we have to do the best we can to be a friend, be a neighbor, even if you're not that close with them. Just give them a call, say, hey, how you doing? We have another question. Any summer love, this one's for you. What do survivors and victims' families need most that they are not getting?
Okay. Support. I feel like families not only, say for instance me, I not only needed my parents, I needed a community. And I feel a lot of times we are living kind of like in this time where everybody's like, look the other way, look the other way. No one wants to get involved anymore because it's scary to get involved. And I don't blame a lot of people, but at the cost of what? And I think we need to get back to that. We need to get back to, like Maria said, looking out for your neighbor and making sure that we're okay, because at the end of the day, it's all we have is each other. And if we just continue to each one, reach one, go by that motto, I think we'll head in the right direction.
Okay, we have a question, Eric. I think both of us could probably answer this, but I'll give it to you. What role can schools and after-school programs do to help curb gun violence?
Yeah, I think it goes to what I said earlier about, unfortunately, the shooters in Lake County or everywhere are getting younger and younger. We can see that in the data. Please also, learn about the data. But our shooters are getting younger and younger in Lake County, which means our interventions and our prevention have to start earlier. By the way, we have to, and I appreciate thinking about the police ride-alongs, thinking about law enforcement. I am the elected state's attorney of Lake County. That means I'm the elected prosecutor, and we prosecute gun violence, dozens a year, hundreds a year. When I made the point about the assault weapon ban, I was only to get you thinking about mass shootings. Of course, we thinking about the individual who was acquitted, thinking about the importance of our police partnerships. We're getting more and more technology, whether it's license plate readers, whether it's being able to get into everybody's cell phone with a warrant. Whether it's we follow the rules in Lake County. We are holding more and more shooters and criminals accountable. So I don't mean to completely. I wasn't in any way dismissing the importance of that part of it, but we know how to do that. Right? We've been doing that for a long time, and we're getting better and better at it, and getting fairer about it when it comes to racial issues. But we know that is an important part of it. But I don't think it's the only answer. I don't think it's the only answer, and I think that there are enough laws on the books that punish all of those crimes. That we're looking for the solutions that support survivors, that fund the support they need. We need new solutions because gun violence continues to be, even though it's going down in the short term here, it continues to be a massive problem. To get to the schools, I think that we have to work with those kids and have the people, the credible messengers. It is the CBI model to be able to say to them, this is why you have to stay out of gangs. This is why you have to stay out of these things. And they certainly have to see that a legal system will be fair, but it will also be firm when it comes to young people's mistakes. And so we have to be thinking always about engaging them as a legal system and not constantly reacting. So I think those after-school programs are also critical to reducing that trauma that we talked about.
Thank you.
And we have another question here. What tools does law enforcement need to be more effective and trusted by the community? I'm going to take a stab at this first, and then I'll give it to both of you. I grew up in a time, and when I went to Loyola University and studied criminal justice, we studied all kinds of different policing methods. And I think the best policing method is the cop on the street, like the beats. Get out of your car, meet with your community, and get to know the people around there, because that's how you gain trust. When I did the police ride-along in Barrington, we stopped at this one area because the officer pulled somebody over, and then out of the door of one of these buildings comes a woman with snacks for the officer. And he goes, oh, she does that all the time. Well, she must know that you stop here all the time. But, you know, those are the relationships that need to be built between the police and the community, no matter where. In Wakanda, I have nothing but praise for that police chief, Chief Wormus, who everybody just loves that man. He is, him and his entire force, everybody knows them. They are out in the community doing the work and engaging with the community. I think we need more communities like that. And the more that people can feel comfortable to talk to an officer, there's that relationship of trust and security, and then our communities feel safe. And I think that's also important for our kids. I don't necessarily agree of having para-patrol in schools. I don't like the idea of having an officer in school with a gun, but I think that having a visit by a police officer to say, hey, this is what I do in my daily job, and I'm happy to talk to you, just like a career day type of thing, I think that's a good thing. I just will say, the more the community understands police officers and the danger that they face also, the more there will be that mutual respect. Eric, Summerlove?
I'll say something briefly. I think accountability is a huge part. I know my son that's here today, when he was around, I want to say 13 maybe, he was riding home, and we live in Kane County in a sort of subdivision where we pay a good amount of taxes that go to our police department. And my son was stopped because he looked suspicious riding on his bike. Why? Because of the color of his skin. And if that officer were to just, know where he lived by asking him, then maybe bringing him home, coming to the door and speaking to his parents, I think that went a long way. But it kind of left, a bad taste in our mouth, because you pull him over, we get the story from our son, who's a child, and there's no accountability from the officer. So I think accountability is a big thing, and I mean, it's biblical to know the condition of your flock, which means know your community. They are here to protect and to serve, which means they are shepherds in a way, so know the condition of your flock. Know your people that you're out here protecting and serving, because that's pretty much your only job to do, and that's how you instill trust in your community and the people around you.
I can't be both of those. I love both of those answers. I'm teaching a Fourth Amendment class. That's the class about warrants and searches and seizures. I'm teaching a Fourth Amendment class at Lake Forest College, and the kids didn't. It was okay. It's okay. The kids didn't know where the police chiefs came from. I'm like, where do you think the police chiefs come from? They're appointed by the mayors, as you all know, or the city council. And I said, so remember, they come from the community. They come from the elected representatives. That's different than what the colonists were facing. That's different if you make every police officer a British soldier or a Soviet agent. Everybody's nodding here, by the way. When I say Soviets to the college class, they're like, "What's a Soviet?" But if you make every police officer a British soldier or a Soviet agent, yeah, I can imagine that's a little bit. You might have a little bit different view of some of these issues. I have loved working with our police chiefs. I loved both answers about accountability and knowing the community and knowing your police chiefs and remembering that they were appointed by a mayor or a city council that comes from the people. That is different than what we are seeing from President Trump when it comes to his tactics in terms of the agents that are being selected. They are not from the community. They are not being trained in the community in de-escalation. things are so much better than when George Floyd was murdered in Minnesota. Maybe that's easy for me to say because I'm a white guy and I'm the state's attorney, so I acknowledge I have a lens when I say that. I think things are better than when George Floyd was murdered. I think we're talking about these things better, at least in the spaces I'm in. So I love the accountability answer, and knowing your community is so important. Last point, the technology is completely different than it was when all of these police chiefs started, when I started as a lawyer. The technology and being able to get into the phones and understand where the bad guys have been and what they have done, because we're all carrying our phone around with us, is a game changer. And we have to hold shooters accountable, because the biggest part of deterrence that the psychology says is the fact that you will be caught, as opposed to how long you will be in custody. Don't get me wrong, I think people should be in custody for a long time when they hurt people, but the certainty of being caught and the certainty of being held is the biggest deterrence factor in terms of telling people that they shouldn't do the wrong thing. It's different than 10 years versus 17 years. It's the percentage that you will be caught. So we must have police with great technology to catch people.
Maria, can I say something?
Yeah, we're gonna actually open it up for questions, so Pamela, you can go
All
first.
of what came out was what was responsible for the police. And everything was responsible for the police, and what I would say is each of us has a responsibility to our neighborhood and to who lives there. And like in your situation for your son, why didn't some neighbor come out and say, hey, I know him, he lives here? You know, I have, this year was a bad year when a lot of landscapers in my street, and I'm also in a construction zone, but when the police did come by, the first thing I did was go outside to say, hi, how are you? You know, here's my name, I live here, what's going on, why are you here? Because I wanted to make sure that nothing was done, and it wasn't because of ICE or anything else. My landscaper doesn't speak English, so I wanted to help him out. I think that we have to take a responsibility for our block. You know, they have signs up that, you know, you have a block neighborhood, but the sign does nothing if you don't come out and help your neighbor. So I think you know, if like you were there and I came out and said, hey, I don't know your name, I know so-and-so, he lives down the street, his mom's really nice, what's going on, what do you need? The cop would have probably said, oh, he belongs here. You know, so I think we have a responsibility as well as the police. Sorry.
And Nancy, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Maria, to give us an overview of how the current incumbent in your district feels about guns and gun violence.
Mr. McLaughlin is definitely, he has an A rating with the Illinois Rifle Association. I have a proud F. So there's a big difference right there. Mr. McLaughlin is very happy to help anybody with their FOID cards, but very reluctant to help with other things that are more pertinent, like how to afford taxes, real estate taxes. He'll teach you how to do real estate tax assessments, but not really tell you the truth about the fact that if you get a break on your real estate taxes, your neighbor next door is going to probably have to pay more of that. So Mr. McLaughlin has been on the stage in Springfield with the National Rifle Association practically the day after we are there lobbying legislators for gun sense legislation. So we are on completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And most recently, when this whole ICE business started coming out, he was on, it was either ABC or CBS, saying, yeah, it's good that ICE come out, and it's good that the National Guard come out, because people in Chicago should be able to walk like they walk in the streets of Wakanda and Barrington, and it's like, you know what? I go to Chicago. This is how tall I am, 4 feet 11, less than 110 pounds. And I'm not walking like I'm afraid. I walk like I own the street. I have, my eyes are open, my ears are open, I'm looking through the glass to see what's happening around me. And I feel quite comfortable, just as I feel as comfortable walking here in Barrington and in Wakanda. So again, that fear mongering is no good. It doesn't build security, which that's all he says. I'm here to make sure that our streets are safe and secure. That is not creating safeness and security. It's making sure that everybody is empowered within themselves to feel safe and then to take care of their neighbor next to them. Anybody else for a question?
Just
Okay,
the name,
well,
of the name of the book again.
Oh, yeah, Unforgiving Places? Unforgiving Places.
The bill that you have for the amount of money that goes to the gun manufacturer, so, okay, a Glock maybe doesn't have the same amount of firepower as that rifle does, so why can't they pay more to sell the bigger gun in the state? Do you know what I'm saying? Like according to firepower or whatever, maybe that would be a way to get some of those guns out of our state.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Those are details that we do need to work out in this bill. The person that is leading the charge for this, we have a group called the Rifle Coalition, and it's made up of groups, Indivisible, whatever. He is a surgeon at the University of Chicago Hospital.
Oh, wow.
He sees what happens every day, and that's why he is pushing this. Along with Dr. Douglas is Sarah Kniznik, who Eric knows very well. Sarah has helped turn, working with Eric, what goes on in Lake County. And she has been like my mentor from day one. So, but those are details that what we do need to do is get this bill passed. And then what happens after the bill is passed, then they work out how the implementation is going to work out. But just to give you an update, so we've been working this bill for over a year. It's been in Springfield. We hope to get it passed this year. We need 30 members of the Senate to say yes. We have 33 members in the Senate who have agreed to vote yes. We need 60 members in the House who have agreed to vote yes, because there's 118 members in the House. So far we have 43. I've spoken to Nabila Syed, took her about 2 minutes before she said she would sign on. I talked to Nicole Grassi, took her about 5 minutes. Mary Beth Canty, same thing, a couple minutes, they signed on. Talked with Dan Dittich. He looked at me, he goes, Jim, this is a no-brainer. But that's what we gotta do. If you understand what this is about, and again, it's not a gun control bill. It has nothing to do with controlling people. So, but that's what we faced when we did a subject matter hearing in Springfield last spring. The gun lobby came out and said, this is a gun control bill. It is not. If you see what it's all about, I think I'm trying to remember the number, HB 3370, I think?
I don't know, I have it.
Yeah. But it's there. From the original bill, we've added the CVI portion.
3320. House Bill 3320 sometimes the numbers change, but that's January 7th of this year. House Bill 3320. 3320.
Okay, one more question? Anyone? No? Yes? Oh, I got two, okay. We'll go.
Hi. I thank you, Summerlove, for your story. It's very moving. And as a high school teacher and someone who was rewarded with having that profession for a lifetime, I see young people growing up in this country facing a real culture of death rather than life. And I don't think we connect a lot of things. Guns are just one part of that. For instance, the current American Cardinal, who's now the Pope, will probably pay out the past $5 billion worldwide for settling child abuse charges. Our internet feeds poison to our young people, and there's nothing that is done about it. 40 hearings, no laws. It doesn't have to be that way. And it's hard growing up in this country, whether it's in Barrington or whether it's in Chicago. You face things that can kill you and harm you and not nourish you.
Right.
So I think guns are just one part of the problem we have in this culture. For instance, I heard the Prime Minister of Australia today apologize to his country for allowing 13 gun deaths. And I've never heard an American politician do that. In fact, grieving parents have to face someone who tells them this was all played out as a non-event. There were performers. So those people who, like Summer, share a story are diminished and it's trivialized. So I would hope that politicians, community leaders begin to connect the dots that make it really hard to grow up in this country and feel nourished. So that's more a statement than a question, but that's been my experience as a lifelong educator and someone who cares about life, not just before someone is born.
My question is for you regarding the use of big data. It's undoubtedly a useful tool for solving crime.
Sure.
And is probably the best and increasing deterrence we've ever had. But what I want to know is, are there and should there be any licensing restrictions on the installation and use of AI-driven cameras? And to give you some context, where I'm coming from is I have a lot of friends who well, as polite as I can be, I call them gun nuts. So I'm a gun owner. I like to think a responsible one, but my gun nut friends use invasive data as an excuse to have more guns. It's a kind of a pushback against Big Brother and big authoritarian control. And that is probably the biggest argument I'm hearing today in support of gun rights. And I've adopted telling a little joke, which is not at all funny, but I tell my gun nut friends, I ask them, how do you tell the difference between a gun nut and a patriot? They can't figure it out to save their lives, but I tell them, gun nuts only care about the Second Amendment, patriots care about all of them. So that's just a little bit of context, but the gun nuts among us are using Big Brother control as an excuse for more guns, and the presence of more guns leads to inappropriate use, irresponsibility, and all of that. So are there any restrictions, or can I just go out and if I have enough money, which is the current story going around, just buy a subscription to every camera in Illinois?
Well, so I mean, so first of all, I love your question. I love your question because I've never been asked it. And I've thought a lot about you. It wasn't for you, but you must have liked it when I said we get into phones, but only with a warrant, right? I mean, that was...
if it's true,
it is
great.
true. It is true. It is true, but it is a huge... I love your question because I grew up in downstate Illinois. I grew up in downstate Illinois, and that is the traditional argument and a fine argument for the Second Amendment in terms of a check on the government power. and the government is becoming more and more powerful, and frankly, before Donald Trump, right? I mean, your question holds that, let's say Trump barely loses in 2016, right? Still heartbreaking, because my story is that he barely lost. My point is, the government has been expanding to do that, and it's not all Trump. So let's just own that, right? It's all of us deciding as we balance safety versus security. You heard me tout.
It's a very long-term trend.
It's a very long-term trend, absolutely, and I really appreciate your point. I've got to think about it. I don't think that you can just subscribe to all of this information. There is some biometric legislation I agree with. Again, I think it's Bob Morgan, that happens to be my state rep, where they're trying to limit the ability to buy biometric data. That's only one part of your answer. I see we have kind of a time limit, but I'm gonna give you my card so we can talk more, because I love the question.
Okay. Yes, okay. Well, I want to say thank you to everyone who came. Your questions were inquisitive, they were helpful, they taught, I think every question taught somebody something tonight. And I will never profess to know everything. I'm a constant learner, so you will never hear me say, I know it all. I don't. And that's why I have Eric. I learned tonight from Summerlove more than I could ever understand about gun survivors. Jim taught us more about the Rifle Act. I'm a constant learner, and so if there's something more that you want me to know to make me a better person, to make me a better candidate, to become a better legislator, please share that with me. My campaign manager's right there. Matt, wave your hand. Alina is our assistant. That's my husband, Kevin. He allows me to
everything. No.
well, I know everything at home.
Oh, he does everything.
Because I do it all at home.
Of course.
So, if you'd like to volunteer to help us win on March 17th, please sign up. If you want to volunteer to help us win in November 26th, please sign up. We have yard signs, and I'm here. Thank you so much.
Great job.